Welcome to another edition of Drugs, Crime, and Politics, brought to you by the Drug Policy Forum of Texas. Good evening. I'm your host, Buford Terrell. Tonight I have my co-host Ben Dunaire with us and our good friend Clayton Jones.
How you doing, Ben?
Houston Normal. And tonight I thought we would start with a roundup of the news of the weird, because it seems to have been coming our way lately.
This week?
There was supposed to be a trial of a marijuana possession case in Houston, which in itself is very unusual. The drug himself said he hadn't seen one in 4 or 5 years. But the trial had to be postponed because while they were picking a jury, they took a break. One of the prospective jurors did not come back from the break. It seems she was arrested for smoking a marijuana cigarette just outside the courthouse.
That was her silent protest?
I just wonder which way she would have voted had she made it to the jury. And then the police found an abandoned, fairly new pickup on the side of one of our Houston roads. And they say that when they approached the pickup, the smell was overpowering. They looked in it. There was something like 1,200 pounds of baled marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the truck was deserted. The owner called the police to report the truck stolen. I think probably his report would have been a little more believable if it had not occurred an hour after the police found the truck. So I haven't seen anything about the follow-up on that. And our third Houston case is a little bit more macabre. It seems that a teenage man was stopped by the police for something. And apparently to divert the cops from whatever they were looking at that night, he told them about an event sometime back, excuse me, when he and 2 of his friends had gone to an abandoned cemetery, dug up a corpse, took the skull home, and used it as a bong to smoke marijuana. The police then went to the home of the second of the 3 young men, told him what they wanted to talk to him about, and as soon as they broached the subject, he apparently got sick to his stomach and threw up on the table where he was sitting. But even stranger, one of the local TV reporters did some examination of the situation and found either 2 or 3 similar cases in the United States over the past several years. And the 4th one, which is still developing, the DEA conducted a major raid around the campus of San Diego State University and arrested around 100 people, around 75 associated with the college. And it seems as if some of the fraternities were actually organized drug dealing outfits.
You got to pay for college somehow.
You're right. We have a caller, I believe. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Hello, I'm on air?
Yes.
Oh, okay. First of all, let me give a shout out to my boys on the north side. Give a shout out to my boys in the heights.
Okay, thank you.
I think he's gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes we don't always have to look at the serious side of the news.
We get the weird coming right to us.
Yeah, I know. Well, a couple of things, especially about the skull case, that really kind of makes me mad, because it's one of the most abhorrent things that people can do. It's kind of similar to when, who was it, Kevin or Keith Richards said that he snorted his father's ashes or something like that. Mm-hmm. This is, a 1 in a million case, and if you associate that with all smokers or all
people
users,
with marijuana, that would be wrong. Definitely wrong.
But on the other hand, one of the subcultures that to some extent is identified with the broader drug culture, not just marijuana, is the goth culture. There's been an association between young people who recreationally use drugs and the macabre and the goth for 40 years at least. So you can probably go into any head shop in the country and find a fake plastic skull.
Right. Yeah, and
people do carry
skull
things
and crossbones and everything. And that's not fair to say that it's necessarily associated with young people. It's definitely associated with the goth and the kind of dark arts. But then speaking of young people, that case in San Diego was extremely unfortunate. And if anyone knows anyone in San Diego or knows anyone who can help out with that case, Students for Sensible Drug Policy was immediately on action. In fact, the president there has gotten so much media on that case and has been able to let the media understand that this isn't, this is unfair to students, kicking them out of their homes and everything and evicting them from their tuition, whether or not they live on campus. Just check out Students for Sensible Drug Policy. It's ssdp.org for more information on how you can help.
From some of the things I've been hearing, the DEA, of course, has overhyped and built the thing up much bigger than it was.
Right.
And has gone out of their way to stress the university connection.
Yeah.
So, you look like you're trying to say something.
No, it's just the DEA just gets me so frustrated that they try to make it look so much worse than things really are. They say a small amount of marijuana is worth large amounts of money. They say that the crop that they cut down in California last year was $11 billion. And they estimate things so dramatically. They blow things so out of proportion.
Well, part of the problem is they tend to take the most extreme street prices. And in fact, that I started thinking about it. In fact, my next column in the Houston Normal newsletter is going to be on precisely this point. But about a year ago, they found a truck that they had said had $14 million worth of marijuana on the Texas border. Now, if you take the actual weight in pounds and multiply it by $100 an ounce, you come up with that figure they quoted. But part of the problem is that price is caused by the law. It's not part of the marijuana situation. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah, I had a question for you.
Okay.
I was reading a publication, and in that publication they had many different strands and types of marijuana plants.
Okay.
And I was wondering, do these plants grow naturally, or are they crossbred by, I guess, botanists and the potency of it? And specifically, I'm speaking of the plants that come out of Hawaii and maybe Colombia.
Okay. Well, we happen to have a brand new graduate of Amsterdam Cannabis College. So, Clayton, you want to tell us a little bit about some of the new hybrids and crossbreeds?
Well, hybrids, usually they mix hybrids for different characteristics. You can mix a hybrid like the Romulan is one that is known to be extremely good for pain. They do a lot of this stuff. They mix breeds just for the end results, and I believe the highest they've gotten on the THC content is about 17%.
Around 17. Now, of course, just speaking in general, the hybrid movement got its start in the early 70s when the Fed started cracking down. And what had happened, most of the marijuana until that time had been either imported from Mexico or grown out of doors in California. As law enforcement clamped down more and more, growers went indoors, started using hydroponics, and started developing better strains to get higher yields. And most of the hybrids and crossbreeds have developed since then. The funny thing is, you talk about a maximum THC of 17%. The market doesn't really support that. Time and time again, buyers tend to want about 6%.
Right.
Yeah. We have another caller. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Don Thomas.
Hello.
And I'm a Katrina evacuee. And I wanted to put this out there because as far as drugs, crime, and politics,
Okay.
why is it that young African males get charged 5 years or 10 years for a first offense on a narcotic charge, cocaine, for example. Now, when someone, a Caucasian, gets busted with powder cocaine, he might get probation for first offense, or diversion, you know. But a young African male, he get that time. He gets that time. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And just to bring that out, because it's very important. Also in New Orleans, they do this. They'll bust the weed man, but they'll let the crack and the heroin go. That's the politics.
Okay. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Excellent question.
First, I want to sympathize with you with what happened during Katrina. I lived in New Orleans myself many years ago, and really kind of sympathize with you. A lot has been written lately about the difference between the crack and powder cocaine sentences, especially since the U.S. Sentencing Commission decided to get rid of that difference. And some people, although probably not enough yet, are being released from prison because of it. But at the time Lynn Bias died, ironically, of powder cocaine, crack was causing a real hysteria. A lot of things appeared in the papers that have since been shown to be utterly ridiculous, like the crack baby scare, among other things. And Congress, frankly, in 1986, overreacted with this 100-to-1 ratio. They passed that law without any debate in Congress at all. It never went to a committee. It was never debated on the floor. It just panicked its way straight through. And the problem is, crack is a poor person's drug. You can get a hit of crack for $3 or $4 or $5. Yeah. At that time, it took about 50 to play the powder game. That's one reason why the difference is there. Anything before we go to this next caller?
Go ahead. There's so much that could be said about racial profiling.
Okay. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yeah.
How are you?
Hello. How are you?
Good morning.
Hi, you're on Drugs, Crime, and Politics. Do you have a question for us?
I'm a cop, you idiot.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want to say about the racial distinctions that show up?
Well, I mean, I guess it boils down to maybe people are opening their eyes a little bit when we have the powder cocaine versus crack sentencing. We're finally getting rid of that disparity. But there's so many statistics about racial profiling and not even statistics, but even there's a saying about it, driving while brown. That's something you can get arrested for. So it's just, when the guy makes a comment like that, it's obvious that everyone understands that this is a problem that we deal with when dealing with drugs, crime, and politics.
I'll say something about that, but let's go to a break first. Yeah. So we'll take a break and see you in a minute or two.
A march to make marijuana legal here in Texas. The so-called Crusade for Cannabis came to the steps of the Capitol today. CBS 42's Rebecca Taylor live there tonight with our big story. Rebecca?
Well, Jason, about 100 people turned out here today at the Capitol for that protest. A lot of people with a lot to say about legalizing marijuana. Protesters started the day making signs like these.
Let's march up to the Capitol.
Then with the police motorcade escorting the way, they took their message to the streets.
No more! Drug war! No more! Drug war!
Converging at the state capitol for a peaceful protest.
It's not for everybody, but it shouldn't be a crime, that's for sure.
Some who say marijuana should be legalized for medical reasons.
It has medical value, and adults like gambling, like subscribing to Playboy, like smoking tobacco, like drinking alcohol. Adults should have the right to use this substance.
And some of the protesters already do.
I'm not dumb, I'd like to do it behind closed doors so I don't get in trouble. We're trying to fight that right now.
Well, smoke it every day, but it's not like other people think. Every day.
And have you ever been arrested?
Yes.
For marijuana use?
Yes.
Texas law is clear. Possessing pot is illegal, and offenders can get up to a year in jail.
We're out here to try to legalize marijuana for for medical purposes, for municipal purposes, to try to, fight the cause.
A fight that could be an uphill battle. State and federal authorities insist marijuana is harmful, calling it a gateway drug that can interfere with brain function and can be addictive. And today's protest was sponsored by NORML. That's the national organization to reform marijuana laws. And some of the protesters here today say their plan is to get lawmakers here at the Capitol to reconsider this matter when they reconvene in legislative session next year. Live at the Capitol, Rebecca Taylor, CBS 42 News and HD.
Houston NORML once again took to the streets of Houston in the annual Art Car Parade. For the third year in a row, hundreds of thousands of people cheered on their entry. This year's theme was Miss Marijuanica with a twist to the All-American Girl. Also on hand were Miss Canniverse and Little Miss Hemp. The rest of the pit crew consisted of Jim, Clay, Bindu, Dwayne, and myself. With almost 300 cars and contraptions, this is easily the best and oldest art car parade in the world. Now in its 21st year, it gives local artists and grassroots organizations a chance to go out and make a statement for the world to see. Ours is to be one of drug peace and a happy integration of responsible marijuana use into society.
As you can see, it's been a busy couple of weeks politically in the state. The Austin March, that was the first of those clips, was part of a worldwide coordinated effort to have a march for cannabis, and this was the first time it's been in Texas in several years now. I noticed our own Steve Nolan was there.
Right. He was in
And then the second clip was Houston's own Art Car Parade with Miss Marijuanica as one of the featured members of the parade.
Right. We got a lot of support from that, and I think it was also because we had 4 gorgeous girls with little sashes on the back of a convertible waving at everyone. But
that
yeah,
never hurts.
It never hurts, but it was definitely a great way to get a lot of advertisement. So hopefully we'll get a lot of people to hit up the websites and everything and check this out. Before we talk a little bit more about the Art Car Parade, we've got a caller, so let's go ahead and take them. Hi, welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
That never hurts. I've been to San Diego, but, if that story had only just come out of San Francisco, what? College students, using marijuana in California? No, say it's not true. But what I really found interesting was when the National Evening News broke the story of pharmacological advertisements this last week, since the industry has been filled with at least a third of its ad space for the last decade. But I think this era is about to come to an end because we're running out of letters and combinations thereof. Really, who's going to buy, 42B5R?
True. True. Thanks, caller. If you have an actual question, feel free to call in again.
Okay.
But he's absolutely right. If you look at commercials, I was trying to gauge, what types of commercials are on, especially during prime time. It's all some type of food, like unhealthy food, and
not greasy potato chips.
McDonald's, and like the more I see McDonald's commercials, the more I hate them. The CEO of McDonald's is actually quoted as saying, "If I saw my competitor drowning in the lake, I'd stick a hose in his mouth and turn the water on full blast." This kind of competitive advertising, that's fine, but if a commercial's not unhealthy food, it's some kind of prescription drug. Yeah.
Yes.
Even
do you have this problem?
Yes. Do you have dry eyes? Get some Visine. Don't get a prescription for that. Jeez. So yeah, it's certainly interesting. He said we're at the end of an era for pharmacological advertisements. Hopefully so, because I can't open up a magazine without knowing what 10 different things are.
Direct-to-consumer advertising on so-called ethical pharmacologicals was not allowed at all until about 20 years ago. All of the advertising was done strictly on a to-the-doctor basis. But what's happening, and I think that the problem that the drug war is having is that until just recently, they drew a very fine line between illegal dangerous drugs and legal good drugs.
Yeah.
And so many of the young people now are abusing the prescription drugs, that old dividing line's not there anymore. Hello, caller, you're on the air.
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
I would like you to comment on the significance of when election times come, there's a drought. And then after elections, all the street drugs come back. It makes no difference what it is. Now, what's that connection between? It's almost election time. It's a drought. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's an observation that goes back way before the drug law. Go back 100 years ago, and all of the whorehouses would be shut down for a month before elections. In the 1920s, the speaks were closed for a week or two before elections. Let's face it, there's a real partnership between the politicians and
illegal
merchants. Yes. Yeah. So. We have another caller? Yeah.
Oh, they kind of want to act like they're making a difference. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, there's just an awful lot of law enforcement that is getting tied up with illegal drugs, stealing them out of the police departments.
In 1999, the keynote speaker at the National Associations of Police Chief Conference said that police corruption was the biggest problem facing American police at that time. Hello, caller. You're on the air.
How you doing? This is Duncan. I want to say something about this. Okay, they give black people 25 years for one drug case, but all these white child molesters, they give them 3 or 4 months to come back to be repeat offenders. I'm over here in the Fountains of Titwell out in Acres Home. We don't understand that, man.
Okay.
Why is that? They give us 35 years for frivolous stuff. But you got all these cult leaders and these polygamists and everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. This haircut deep.
Great. Thank you for the question. He's got an absolutely correct point. There's actually Christopher Largan is an author. He wrote Prescription Pot with George McMahon out of Denton. He started an organization. It was like basically potheads before pedophiles, but not that crass, I guess. But it's absolutely true. Why is it that pedophiles, they get off with suspension, probation for first-time offense?
Pedophiles should go to prison and never get out.
As about 5 years ago, in a study done of the federal prisons, in the federal prison system overall, drug sentences were about 2 years longer than murder sentences. Now, part of the problem is that in this country, there is a very close correlation between economic status and skin color. We had a white judge's daughter here in Houston about a year ago arrested and charged with DWI homicide. She had the best lawyer money could buy. She had expert witnesses. She had character witnesses of every kind come out of the woodwork. She got basically a slap on the wrist. You take a black kid off the streets, he's going to have an appointed lawyer. He's not going to have a school principal that'll come speak on his behalf. He doesn't have the same kind of support system to help manipulate the system.
Mayor White's daughter got a drunk driving charge, and she beat that, didn't she?
I don't remember that one. It's quite possible.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened.
Hello, caller. You're on the air.
Yes, I have 2 questions.
Okay.
I was wondering, what is the percentage of drugs that are confiscated by the police or the sheriff's department that they confiscate and do not turn in?
Okay.
I was also wondering, I know police usually take a drug test when they are hired, but do the police force and the city councilman take random drug tests?
Okay.
No. Those are both very interesting questions. The first one, I think it's like, how many licks does it take to get to the center of Tootsie Roll? We'll never know. But how many what percentage of drugs is confiscated and never reported? So basically, how much are they using?
Well, I hear about a lot of cases of police finding small amount of drugs on young people, making them dump it out, or finding a little bit of alcohol on them, and dumping it out and saying, "Go on your way."
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for those policemen.
Yeah.
But part of what happens, and there's no way to know, cases pop up often enough for us to suspect there's a lot of it. Now, let's say that it takes, and this, I'm just making the number up because let's say it takes a kilogram of cocaine to make a serious felony. If the cops arrest someone with 5 kilograms, there will be enough to make the felony show up in the property room. The other 4 disappeared. If you follow the MAP Inc. clipping service, collects drug stories from all over the world, really. And the ones that I filter out and collect myself on police corruption, police malpractice, and collateral damage, I have gotten well over 100 stories from across the country just this year so far. So it happens quite a bit.
The other question that he had that I wanted to comment on, he said, at some point police officers are given some kind of drug test, and of course city council members, things like that aren't. But what?
I think,
well, it's against the Constitution to give a drug test to a city councilman, as it should be for all of us.
As it should be for all of us.
But since there's no health or safety related issue, then it's an invasion of privacy to test an elected official like it would be someone who works behind a desk. As far as police departments are concerned, in most jurisdictions there's no testing because the police are unionized and their union contracts forbid testing, and they've never allowed renegotiations to change it.
If they ever really want to check them for drug abuse, they check them for steroids.
Well, there's
about 10 years ago, there was a serious case here in Houston of something like a dozen police officers kicked off the force because they were stealing steroids and working out at the gym because they wanted to be both ripped and aggressive for their work.
We don't need that.
Hello, caller, you're on the air.
My third and final comment. This is the Katrina, this is Don. First of all, in dealing with public officials, this is a personal experience.
Okay.
I'm a musician and I perform at City Hall.
Okay.
I'm not going to name no names, but he said, y'all two come here. We go in his office, in City Hall. He said, don't y'all come out till you finish. Now, this is City Hall.
Yeah.
This is a public elected official. They do this, these kind of things.
Yeah.
My second comment is, I had a friend who was a police officer, and he was kicked off the force because he couldn't arrest people and jeopardize their life when he see his partners and fellow police officers put people away, and they do the same thing. They do the same thing. And not only that, not only did he get kicked off the force, he was killed, and nobody knows why.
Well, thank you,
Okay,
caller.
thanks for your comments.
My daughter was married to a policeman in Connecticut, and she never got a speeding ticket, and my daughter has got a foot like there's no tomorrow.
Well,
the cars are registered to police officer by his name.
In New York, at least, and I think it happened here in Houston for a while, a special jewelry store would sell a souvenir miniature copy of her husband's badge to the wife of a police officer. And these apparently made you immune to traffic tickets. But
it's like those back the blue bumper stickers.
Yeah, those don't really work. So.
I know.
But no, police have their problems just like the rest of us. But to counter what Clayton was saying, with them turning loose a lot of kids with minimum amounts of drugs, the police are as cynical as anybody about the effectiveness of marijuana laws. They know they're a pile of crap. But just like they might turn some kids loose, marijuana possession is a great hassle arrest. So the kid that wises off to the cop or gives the cop a hard time probably gets a ride downtown.
Yes.
Right.
Another caller?
Yeah, we've got a caller. Welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Hi, my name is Jason Benavides.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Do you have a question for us, Jason?
Yeah, I was saying, like, the attorney talking about they should have done no drugs, no nothing, because they should not have that attorney at all, because they should be in jail for doing all that kind of drugs. And I heard that story, like, a lot of times since, like, yesterday or whatever.
Are you asking, can they send you to jail for having drugs even if you didn't have any?
Yeah, because, like, the attorneys that do that, they should not have done that at all.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for the question. On speculation of drug charges, can they send you to...
The justice system, as a lawyer, I'll have to say, ain't perfect. There are lots of innocent people that have been convicted. There are lots of guilty people that have walked out clean. The problem is, in this state, even a minimum marijuana possession charge carries with it a 6-month jail sentence. So a lot of times, even a good lawyer will recommend to a client that even if you didn't have it, let's work a deal, plead guilty, take prohibition, keep your record clear of convictions, and don't go to jail. So, yeah, it happens. As we started out tonight with the judge saying he hadn't seen a marijuana possession case actually go to trial in several years. So the cost of losing a marijuana possession trial is just so great that no one can really afford to maintain their innocence. I mean, you just don't risk 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a just system.
Well, on a side note, with the smaller scale marijuana being pulled over for marijuana possession, the marijuana arrest is very much a hassling ordeal to see if you have anything else, etc.
Right.
Yeah, so a great organization that tries to help you counter that and help you understand how to deal with that type of situation is flexyourrights.org. They came out with a video called Busted.
Yeah.
It's a disclaimer. It's not a panacea, get out of jail free card, but it's certainly a way to deal with those types of situations. So while we're on break, why don't you guys check out that website, and we'll be right back in a couple minutes.
Okay.
Well, my name is Annie. I'm about your daughter's age. I'm happy with my living, earning minimum wage. Last year I had a baby, loving with all I got. But the bills, they became too much, so I moved a little apart. Now I'm an expatriate in my hometown, and I can't even vote to change the laws that put me down. I only pray that you fare better. I wear my marijuana leaf like a badge, it's my scarlet letter. And time goes slow here from behind these bars, but I'm not so far away that I can't hear the cars driving down the freeway, wishing one of them could give me that short ride downtown where my little boy lives. But I'm an expatriate in my hometown, and I can't even vote to change the laws that put me down. I only pray I wear my marijuana leaf like a badge, it's my scarlet letter. A badge, it's my scarlet letter. And I don't want you to feel sorry for me. And I ain't unbending this for your sympathy. I knew it wasn't legal, but was it really so wrong? Put me down, I only pray that you fare better. I wear my marijuana leaf like a badge, it's my scarlet letter. Yeah.
Well, we're joined now on the telephone by our old friend Dean Becker from Cultural Baggage and the Drug Truth Network. How are you tonight, Dean?
I'm very good, Buford. Good to talk with you. I see you're getting a lot of calls tonight, and I think that's indicative of the fact that more and more people are beginning to realize this drug war is not working, looking for some answers to the problems which permeate every aspect of our society. And I'm proud to say that I think we're trying to cover as many of those bases as we can on the Drug Truth Network. I want to report to you that today I interviewed Judge Pat Lykos on my show. We talked the drug war pretty thoroughly. Last week, it was Clarence Bradford, the Democratic candidate for DA. And it's time to open the dialogue. As you guys have done over the years, it's time for us all to realize there is a definite need for change. We need to work together to just open the door, to crack the window, to begin the process. And I'm so proud to be associated with you guys and the work you do. On yesterday's Century of Lies program, we had a report from San Ho Tree. You probably know him. He's Institute for Policy Studies in Washington, D.C., and he told us about his recent trips to Colombia, talked about the situation down there where this free trade agreement is supposed to provide assistance to these farmers up in the high mountains growing the coca, so they can have a different commodity to sell. But the fact is that money will only benefit the people that have farms on the roads, that have access to the commerce. And so therefore it's just not going to stop the drug trade. It's not going to make any difference. I got a report yesterday also from Phil Smith of StopTheDrugWar.org. He told us about his trip just about a week ago to Mexico. He was in one of the cities where they're having a major drug conference trying to determine what to do. And that very evening there was chases of cops chasing carloads of traffickers, and then the traffickers got 15 SUVs and chased the cops around for a while. Deaths on both sides. It's not making any sense. And then you guys have been talking about marijuana. Next week we're going to have Dr. Mitch Earlywine. He's author of a brand new book, Parents Discussing Marijuana with Their Children, and that'll be on the Cultural Baggage Show. My shows are Tuesdays, and, well, during pledge drive it varies, but typically it's 11:30 to noon. on Tuesdays and 11:30 to noon on Wednesdays. That's Century of Lies and Then Cultural Baggage. And most afternoons at 4:20 p.m. you can hear the 420 Drug War News. Hundreds, approaching thousands of our shows are now online at drugtruth.net. You guys keep up the good work, and I'll get off the phone so you can get some more callers in tonight.
Okay, and you keep it up too, Dean. I wanted to make one comment, and then I'll turn it over to you for just a minute. And this was the young man that was calling about being charged. And here I'm of two minds. As someone who used to be a working lawyer, I know fully that no one with any sense puts themselves at risk of going to jail or being convicted and losing their job. On the other hand, I also know that of the 750 to 800,000 people arrested for marijuana last year, if only 1 out of 10 of them had insisted on their right to a jury trial, thought it all the way through, the system would have crumpled and reform would have happened. I mean, I can't honestly, with my heart, tell anyone to put your own life on the line, but sometimes there are things worth running at risk for. But anyway, you want to talk to Clayton about something?
No, that's absolutely true. That's a great point to make. Yeah, it's absolutely fighting the system and not kind of laying down and letting it run you over. The thing that I wanted to talk about was we had mentioned the art car parade and how wildly successful it was, and it was. Clay, you were talking about how out of, what was it?
When we were decorating the car for about an hour and a half, Dwayne, myself, was sitting outside in front of the car talking to the crowd as they went by, passing out literature. And I'll bet you in an hour and a half of talking to the crowd, I didn't have but 5, 6 people that were stood up and said, I disagree with what you're doing the way you're doing it.
Right. And we were actually, riding around with the car, and I tell you, out of maybe 100 people, there was one person who disagreed. There were so many cheers and so many yells, but there were a couple of people who were able to voice their disagreement through the mayhem. And one of the things that stuck with me that I've been thinking a lot over this last week is someone yelled out, oh, that's a great message to send to the children. Especially the fact is there was a girl there who was about 8 or 10 years old, and she's always helped out with it, and I've never thought twice about it until this time. And I think we can hold off onto the caller because, hopefully they'll stay on the line, or if not, call back. But the fact of the matter is, I think it is a great message that we're sending to the children. And just as the name of the children is always held and always thrown in the air when it comes to the morality of the drug wars, are we really trying to help them, or are we just using their name? And the fact is, I was talking with my friend who also was like, I don't think that was a good idea. But this girl, because she's been involved in this, and because she has seen this different perspective and doesn't think of it as the scary, evil drug that, she doesn't know anything about, and then one day is going to try, and it completely blows her mind. She knows the facts about it. She knows, the good about it, the bad about it, and the consequences.
Right. Well,
so
the worst message you can send to a kid is to lie to them.
Right.
Yes.
The only way you can raise a kid correctly is to tell them the damn truth all the time.
Exactly. And that's why the DARE program is a government program, absolute failure. Studies have shown that kids who went through the DARE program were actually more likely to use drugs. That's why the ONDCP had to pull that. That's why those $2 million ONDCP ads are also ineffective and just a waste of money. Dean mentioned Mitch Earlywine has just come out with a book of parents how to talk to their kids about marijuana. Dr. Marsha Rosenbaum from San Francisco, I think it is, or somewhere in Cali, has also always been, she's a sociologist, has always had amazing literature and a safety-first, fact-based approach to drug education, which is available for schools as well. Is the caller still on the line? Let's go ahead and try to take one. Yeah, let's find out. Hi, caller. Welcome to Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Yeah, a lot of great information is coming from the show. I think I heard someone comment earlier that elected city officials do not take drug tests, And I think that maybe if we could get like some of the mayors or the councilmen to take drug tests, it would help them to fight for our cause, because we do know that they are human and they do maybe some things in the privacy of their homes that it's like they're getting a free pass. If we could get the mayor to, provide his record, maybe we could get him to fight for a cause.
Yeah. Thanks, caller.
At least one candidate about 10 years ago did fight for us, because his state passed a statute requiring all candidates for elected office to take a drug test. He filed suit, and the federal courts declared that statute unconstitutional. It's an outright invasion of privacy to test someone for drugs unless there is a direct health or safety issue involved. So a bus driver, test them. An airline pilot, test them. A policeman who's carrying a gun and who's ferrying dope back and forth to the evidence locker probably should be tested, even though his contract says don't do it.
Right. Looks like we've got another call. Hi, welcome to Drugs and Politics. Can you turn your television down? Hi, we can barely hear you.
My television is all the way down.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, you were mentioning about in the court the plea bargain. When you say you should fight for your right. Well, they got what they call the plea bargain. And the plea bargain is easier to work with than to fight for something that you can't see. Most when you go to court, personally, rather than plea bargain, I went to a situation where the cops put some drugs on me, and I fought it, but my thing was the Lord. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, I beat it. But
good for you.
They gave me a plea bargain where, I would do 2 years of drug testing. If you fail that, then you really get your time. You know what I'm saying? The plea bargain. Speak on that.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Well, I will say that when I was a working lawyer years ago, and a bunch of other lawyers agreed with me on this, the lawyer's nightmare is to have an innocent client walk into his office. Because if the guy that walked into your office did it, then you're in the business of getting the best outcome for him that's possible. That means plea bargains. It means going to trial if you have to. It means whatever to minimize the cost to him. If an innocent client walks into your office, you work your hardest, you do your damnedest, but you still go to the courtroom and flip the coin with the jury. As I said, I can't honestly recommend to anyone that they take their case to trial because the risk is too great. But it's the only way that you really make the system conform.
You got to make the system accountable to itself. I mean, if everybody just sits there and lays down and does this plea bargain, we're all in trouble.
Yeah. Now, the problem with the justice system, and guys have heard me give cops a hard time for years here. The problem with the criminal justice system is that it works too damn well. Most of the time, the cops get the right person. Most of the time, the jury comes up with the right verdict. So everyone connected with it starts seeming, most of the time includes this time, and the system loses its sensitivity for the guy that's really innocent. And that should be where the focus is. But most of the people that end up in front of the bar in the courthouse ought to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
Looks like we got another caller. Okay. Hi. Thanks for calling Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Thank y'all for taking my call.
Okay. Definitely.
This is my second time checking your show. I need to put that number up there a little bit more often. I had to wait a little while. I'm glad I had a second half.
Okay.
The number. Okay, but look here. I got some information that could be helpful in what y'all talking about.
Okay.
I did. My name is David. And I did 9.5 years in Texas prison. I've been out a little bit over 5 years. I'm drug free today. I was a crack addict and from 90 to 93. And I got out of prison in 2002. The thing I'm calling for, while I was in there, the Texas prison doesn't have tobacco products. Did y'all wear that? The jails, none of that?
No.
Okay.
The Texas prisons do not allow tobacco products.
There you go.
Right.
There's a difference.
Yeah. He knows. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, but we can't go out and buy tobacco and dip and drugs. The officers bring that stuff in there. And a lot of guys, when they get business, they people slip money in and what have you. You know what I'm saying? But the point I'm trying to make is that whoever it is, when you break the law, you a criminal.
Yeah.
And the officers who bringing that stuff in, the policemen that get these drug raids, that don't turn out into everybody. If I got to be tested, and I'm a forklift driver, I got to be drug tested. Isn't it ironic that this person that's packing a pistol, started out shotguns, and got a badge on, can confiscate kilos of dope, and they don't drug test them?
Okay, thank you.
Wait, one more thing. The deal in Philadelphia, they stumped this guy. You know, you just saw this last week. They running this stump, but the whole world see this.
Yeah.
And they would think the American people is crazy. Have a good day.
Okay,
thank you. Thanks for watching.
I have to say some things here. He makes a very good point. Illegal drugs are not unavailable drugs. And a study done in federal prison a few years ago showed that the level of drug use inside the federal prison was almost exactly the same as that outside the prison, with one exception. In the maximum security prisons, the drug use was twice that it was on the street. And he was talking about a federal prison. And first, I have to congratulate him for 6 years out of the joint and doing good. That's wonderful. But in the Texas prisons, where a guard makes maybe $20,000 to $22,000 a year, which is no money, cigarettes are illegal. A third of a cigarette can be sold, and this is the last number I've got, it might be higher now. A third of a cigarette was worth $5. That turns a $3.50 pack of 20 cigarettes into $100. That's tax-free. That's a lot of temptation for an officer that makes 20 grand a year.
Definitely. Well, Dean Becker used to have his Mr. K, who was also in federal or state prison, I can't remember which, who would be on the phone and report back and say, yes, these drugs are more available here than on the outside and everything. Also, all great points, but it looks like we've got another caller. So, hi, thanks for calling Drugs, Crime, and Politics.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I've been a very responsible adult as far as my job occupation, and have friends that I grew up with over the years, and the myth about marijuana being a gateway drug leading to harder drugs is just that, a myth. I've never done cocaine, very rarely drink, and the politics of the information that's misleading the people is very, very humongous as far as saying that it is a gateway drug. And I had a question as far as other societies, I guess, throughout the world that use marijuana as a religious purpose. I guess specifically the Rastafari, who I guess, meditate to a higher consciousness through the using of that drug, marijuana, in the churches. And also, when you do, it's a very relaxing as far as the medicinal use of it, as far as back pains and things like that. But it also eases the mind, but the music sounds much, much better.
Okay, thanks for the call.
That's why they call it a mind-expanding drug.
Yeah.
It frees your mind. You can enjoy most everything a little bit more.
A little bit brighter. But this guy had made a lot of good points. And one thing is, for all those people who have been watching and asking great questions, there were a lot of points that he brought up. Are there any kind of, I guess, books or websites that you want to recommend where they can find out more about why marijuana has been disproven to be a gateway drug?
Well, the best thing on that is still the Institute of Medicine report from 1999.
And I guess for layman's term, or for layman's, if you're not willing to read the Institute of Medicine report, there's that Jack Herer's book, The Emperor Wears No Clothes.
Yeah. Erowid, EROWID.org, is the best factual source of information on drugs.
Right.
I wanted to take some time tonight to do a little bragging. Discussion came up on the internet this last week, and Drug Policy Forum of Texas internet mailing list, which has been in operation since 1995, is possibly the oldest continuing internet discussion group on drugs in the country. We talked to Dean Becker tonight. Dean's doing so many shows on the radio now that I keep teasing they're going to change the call letters of the station from KPFT to KPOT. This show's been on the air for about 10 years. Dean and I were talking. As near as we can tell, he and the group that produced this show are the only ones that have full-time drug culture-focused broadcasting in the country. But as a way of bragging, I want to read a brief statement from Patricia Ofterheide from In These Times back in 2005. It's quoted in Bill Moyer's new book. This is a moment when public media outlets can make a powerful case for themselves. Public radio, public TV, cable access, public DBS channels, media arts centers, youth media projects, nonprofit internet news services, low-power radio and webcasting are all part of a nearly invisible feature of today's media map, the public media sector. They exist not to make a profit, not to push an ideology, not to serve customers, but to create a public, a group of people who can talk productively with people who don't share their views and defend the interest of the people who have to live with the consequences of corporate and government power. Since she wrote that, the whole blogosphere and the social networks have opened up. And as I read it, I got to thinking, the image we all have of the American patriot is the farmer that when he heard Paul Revere yell, "The British are coming," he grabbed his musket off the fireplace and rushed to battle. The patriot I see today is the one that when he hears the government feed him a line of bull, grabs his keyboard or his telephone, and he fires at the whites of their eyes. And one way to do that is make sure your elected representative knows how you feel on these issues. I love the way you guys are making the phone ring. Keep that up. But more important, keep those phones ringing in Austin and Washington. You all want to add anything?
One way to keep us on the air and one way to have that independent free speech, Houston Media Source needs your support, and the KPFT is in their pledge drive right now. If you cannot contribute money, please contribute your time.
And I would like to say that everybody, the movement is starting to go, and we need people to work with us.
What I've been hearing for 8 months now is that politically this year, change is in the air. And believe me, people, in my nose, that change smells a whole lot like burning bud. Thank you and good night.
Policy of drug prohibition is hopeless. It is hopeless. It will never get better. Literally, victory today is being defined as slowing down the pace of defeat.
We ought to listen to science and medicine when it comes to whether marijuana or any other substance has a medical benefit.
The fact that marijuana is less dangerous than drugs.
We're going full-blown into a program that has failed and failed every other time we tried it. Please point out one success in 30 years of an eradication program that has stopped drugs from coming in this country. Point out one success, because I reviewed that research and there isn't.